love fashion, don't they? And probably that is the reason why everything that they design have a bit of that fashion sense to it. And probably that is also the reason why most of the things they design, particularly cars, seem quirky to the rest of the world. Now, I believe that they also draw inspiration from certain articles of clothing. The Renault Duster, which is the most arguably French SUV that is known to India, draws inspiration from the rough and tough hiking boot. Whereas this, the C5 Aircross, seems to draw inspiration from sports shoes. Especially these air bumps, as Citroen likes to call them, seem inspired by the air cells or the air pockets that you see on some of the running shoes. Whereas the accents that you see on them, well, they seem to be inspired from the highlights that you see on some of the newer sports shoes. Does it all look good? I think it all comes together rather nicely, gives this car a very fresh appearance, makes it look quite distinctive, and I think that distinctive styling is what will work for the C5 Aircross when it comes to India next year. Citroen's aim with this car was to bring a fresh new design to the mid-high SUV segment and also introduce this segment to the acclaimed comfortable ride quality that the brand has been boasting about since the 2CV. So before we start talking about its design, let us first drive it out and see if it's actually that comfortable. The short answer to that is yes, the ride quality is damn good. In fact, the weather's not been too kind in this part of the world right now. I'm driving this car in Paris, the home of Citroen, and it's been raining throughout. And that's one of the reasons why I started this review in a parking lot. And that's also the reason why I have been able to take this car through its paces in different kinds of terrain, different kinds of weather, to really talk everything I have to about this particular car. And now that the weather has opened up, let us talk about this car. So in terms of the suspension, like I said, the ride quality is phenomenal. In fact, it is one of the best that I have encountered in this particular price bracket. And what I also like is the kind of ride that it gives you, the kind of cushioning that it gives you, especially when you hit potholes. And yes, I did find places that have potholes here on the B roads. So every time you hit a pothole, it feels like the tire is literally extending itself into the pothole or into the undulation. It doesn't feel like it's taking that particular corner of the car down with it. In fact, right now, I'm not on a very good road and you can see it's not moving around too much. That's really good. So this suspension employs what Citroen likes to call the progressive hydraulic cushions. So essentially it maintains a flat ride when you're riding over undulated surfaces. It gives you that nice and cushy feeling when you are driving this car on bad roads, and that is something that all of us will really love back home in India. How good is it is something that we need to wait and watch. Citroen has added two hydraulic stops, one for the rebound and one for the compression, which, unlike mechanical bump stops, are better at reducing rebound and sharper shocks. They work with the conventional springs and shock absorbers to gradually slow down the movement of the suspension to iron out any jolts or discomforting rebound. I've tried my level best to take this car across broken roads, even a bit of off-road, but not too optimistic because the weather just doesn't allow it. I don't want to be stuck around in this car because this is, at the end of the day, a front-wheel driven car. But that said, it is pretty good at everything that it does. Power to the front wheels comes from quite a few options. 2 petrol engines that Citroen likes to call Pure Tech and 3 diesels which are classified as Blue HDI. Now all those engine options are Euro 6.2 compliant, which means that they will not need a lot of modifications when Citroen decides to bring them to India and make them BS6 compliant. Now what all will come to India, we don't know yet. There is still a little bit of a speculation on which options will make it to India. I'm not very sure whether the 2-litre diesel will come to India. There are also a few hybrids that are going to come out at the end of the year for the C5 Aircross, and I hope that Citroen does consider those, or one of them at least, for the Indian market. As of now, we are going to concentrate on the 1.6-litre petrol engine that I'm driving right now. Don't make faces yet. I know 1.6-litre, but then the output, 180 PS and 250 Newton meters. And well, it does feel like a 180 PS car. So like I said, don't make faces just yet. It is an extremely nice engine, very easy to drive in the city, very nice on the highway as well, cruises effortlessly, and even around the twisties, it has enough poke to put a smile on your face. So don't write off the 1.6-litre engine just yet until you drive this car. The engine is also mated to a drive-by-wire and a park-by-wire system, and that frankly needs a little getting used to because the throttle pedal feels quite different, extremely light. In fact, in some scenarios, it almost feels like it's feather touch sensitive. I'm exaggerating, of course, but like I said, it does need a little getting used to, especially when you're driving around town like this. It does feel quite light. And out on the highway, if you are being coasting for some time and then you decide to get back onto the power again, it does take a little moment before it responds to that throttle input, which again is not a deal breaker in any sense. It's just a matter of getting used to. The engine is extremely refined and you hardly hear it past the 4000 RPM mark. It is complemented by an equally good insulation of road and wind noises, keeping this cabin pretty silent even at highway speeds. In that sense, it feels quite premium than what it is. This engine is mated to what Citroen likes to call the EAT transmission. Well, that's EAT, Efficient Automatic Transmission 8-Speed. That's quite a fancy name, but a befitting name for the efficient 8-speed ISIN unit. Now, this is the same gearbox, the AWF8F gearbox, that also powers the likes of the BMW X1. And it is really efficient. It is a very nice gearbox. It is very quick to respond to part and full throttle inputs. It's quick to downshift in that sense. Upshifts do take a while, but it's quick to downshift, quick to build speed. So whether you're pulling an overtake at highway speeds or even pottering around town, this gearbox is pretty impressive. Around the twisties, however, you might want to resort to the manual override, and that is easily done using paddle shifters behind the wheel. I really hope though the paddle shifters were a bit better, nicer to touch. These are very plasticky. They even make this plasticky noise, but that's about it. I think it's a nice gearbox and these paddle shifters are nice to have. Now, talking about the visibility that this car offers, the exteriors have already shown you that this is a big boxy vehicle, so getting a judgment of all the four corners of the car is not a problem at all. And in terms of visibility, it's very easy. The windshield is nice and large, the glass house is really large, the A-pillar not too fat, the wing mirror slightly bigger, but they don't really intrude into your cornering or your peripheral vision all that much. So visibility is not a concern at all. But if I had to go nitpicking, the rear windshield is a bit too small. If you have to get a view outside of that, you might have to get a second glance from the rear view mirror. That's about it. But again, not a big issue. It's something that just needs getting used to and a second glance. Driving in the rains and driving on wet surface, broken roads and all of that has also sort of allowed me to put the traction control system to test. Not very intrusive. In fact, the ESP works pretty well. Gives you that sense of security inside the cabin, and that's a very good thing. In fact, the ESP is so good that it has also allowed them to have different terrain modes like some of the other cars already offer. So all of that is in here as well. So if you want to drive on wet roads, go off the road, go on broken patches, sandy terrain, rocky terrain, you have all of that you can choose right from this little rotary dial on the tunnel console. There is no all-wheel drive option, but the 230mm ground clearance and the all-road driving mode did a fine job on some of the wet trails that I drove on. The C5 Aircross has earned itself a 5-star Euro NCAP rating in the safety department and features assists like active lane keep, adaptive cruise control, automated braking and fatigue warning. And since we are on the topic of safety, what I also like is the inclusion of a little dash cam inside the rear view mirror. It is a forward-facing camera, nicely integrated in there, and records everything in front of it. It just needs an external card. It's also got Wi-Fi capability. It can also directly stream to your phone and all of that. I've not put it to complete use yet because I'm unable to install the particular app that's required for it, maybe due to some region issues. But that's a very nice, very cool feature to have, and I really hope that they bring that feature to India. The forward-facing camera and the reversing camera together are used to create a 360-degree panoramic view of the surroundings. However, it just doesn't work as efficiently as a regular 360-degree camera setup. Now, moving back to the suspension and handling dynamics. Well, all that cushy ride quality also has an impact on the way this car drives. Under braking, there is a bit of a nosedive because it is a squishy setup at the end of the day, and when you hit the bends, well, there is plenty of vertical movement. Soft is the keyword for this car, and that's exactly what it feels when you also go around the twisties. So is this a very enthusiastic car when it comes to driving around the bends? Well, there are better options, of course. Is this too wallowy? Not really. Will this give you motion sickness? I doubt that. Until we really hit the twisties back home in India, I can't really comment on that, because what I've been driving on right now are mainly flat roads, straight roads and a few curves here and there. But yes, it does give you the feeling that this is a softly sprung car and there is a fair bit of vertical movement. The other bit that contributes to the comfortable feeling inside the cabin is the sound insulation and, more importantly, the differently cushioned seats. So in terms of the interior, the first thing that you will notice is all the squared off theme once again. We saw that on the outside and you also get that on the inside. You have these square AC vents, you have a very nice grid-like layout for the dashboard. I think it all looks quite nice. All these stitched materials, soft touch materials, it really elevates the feel of this cabin. Now some of the common touch points like here, they're all done up in soft touch, while on top it's a bit of a scratchy plastic material, but it all comes together quite harmoniously, looks quite nice. A little bit of nitpicking here, well, because you have split vents here, I would have really liked individual control so that you could literally these could be essentially 8 different AC vents, so it would have been a lot more versatile in the way you could cool the cabin. Right now it doesn't happen. When I move this, it moves the entire fins, set of fins inside, which is a bit of a lost opportunity is what I would say. In the center you get an 8-inch touchscreen. Even the instrumentation is all digital. Now before we come to that, I really need to talk about this squared off theme taken down to the seats. You get these nice little pads right here and it feels quite nice. It is also quite comfortable. In fact, it contributes to that cushy feel that the suspension gives you. Even the seat gives you that cushy feel. The driver's seat is electronically adjustable, manually adjustable for the passenger seat. And in terms of the space management, that is something that I really need to draw your attention to. The space management is superb. Now, in fact, if you look at the tunnel console, I have space for a large size croissant, I have space for my coffee, and if I open this, I have space for my wallet. I have a deep, big space right here that can even take a tripod, my keys, all of that is right in here, and it's also lit. So because the insides are quite dark, they're black, if you put in your keys or if you put in some stuff that you think is going to get lost in there, there is lighting there as well. I can also keep my phone here. It's a wireless charging pad. There's a 12-volt socket, there's a USB port. In between are the drive mode selectors, the terrain mode selectors, and this really nice gear shifter. Continuing on the space, the door pads can take a huge 1.5 liter bottle. So in terms of space management, I think it's spot on. That's something that we are going to love back in our market as well. The fit and the finish feel quite premium, and the tan upholstery contributes further to that effect. All the controls and the storage spaces fall easily at hand, but the start button and the gear selector need a firm push for their operation. In terms of the infotainment, like I said, it is an 8-inch screen. This is the kind of layout that you get. Large icons, very easy to use when you're driving as well. You also get additional switches right at the bottom. Reminds me of microwave ovens. That's the kind of instrument panel that is. It doesn't give you any kind of a haptic feedback or any sort of feedback, or even a chime for that matter, to know that you've pressed it. Of course, there is a change that happens on the screen, but if you're doing this while you're driving, you have to literally take your eyes off the road. Also, the air conditioning, all the controls are on the touchscreen itself. I'm not sure if you're a fan of it. People are polarized on that. Some people like it, some people don't. I don't think it's that big a problem because you don't really end up choosing or changing the temperature quite often. Once you set your desired temperature and leave it in auto, you usually do that. You don't have to go back to this menu all that often. But if you're the kind who wants those physical controls for air conditioning vents, well then you don't get that in the C5. You have it on the instrumentation or the infotainment itself. As for the rest of it, well, it's a little bit of a difficult layout to use. Like now I'm searching for the home button and I can't really find it. So in terms of the layout, not the most intuitive layout, but anyway, you get Bluetooth connection, you get Wi-Fi connectivity as well. This will have connected technologies, so there will be other apps and everything that you can use with it, like some of the other cars like the MG Hector and the Kia Seltos that give you the connected tech. You also get Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, MirrorLink connectivity. So if you need any of that, all that is right here. And like I said, there are connected apps that you can use. Music quality, well, it is actually quite good. I tried playing my own music. I tried the radio as well. And all of that is actually quite nice. In fact, the audio quality is one of the best that I've heard in this particular category. But I'll hold my opinion on that for later. Anyway, so that is the infotainment. Moving on to the instrumentation, it's a 12.3-inch screen and you can also customize it. So you can have regular dials with the speed and the rep counter and all of that. You can also settle for a very minimal layout if you have to. Just select minimum and it moves down to an absolute basic layout, gives you the absolute basics that you need while driving. So in terms of customizability, I think the instrumentation is also quite nice. I could have done, or I could have wished for, or rather I do wish for better controls on the steering wheel. It's a very simple layout, but at the same time, the volume controls, they're switches, whereas for the track, there's a roller button. I think it should have been the other way around, because it's happened a lot of times that I've ended up changing the track when I actually had to change the volume. So in terms of intuitiveness, I think both the infotainment and the controls and the overall switchgear, it could have been a little more intuitive. But then again, it's just a matter of living with this car, getting used to all of it, and once you do, it shouldn't be that big a problem. Well, talking about the rear seat, the same cushions also move to the back seat, and it's a very comfortable place to be in. Knee room, well, not that great. This seat is set to my driving preference. There's still about an inch for the seat to be retracted back, and if that happens, I will not have any knee room left whatsoever. But with my driving preference, well, that's the kind of knee room that I get. Foot space, however, is quite good. I can nicely extend my feet. Also, headroom, not bad. Maybe if you're taller, there could be a problem because this part sort of intrudes in and you might have to sort of sit with a slightly bent position. But the beauty of these seats is that all three of them are the same size, so essentially they can take 3 adults. There is a bit of a protrusion here from the rear AC vent, so the center passenger may not be all that comfortable, but the center passenger will obviously have better headroom than the ones on the side. And all 3 seats can be adjusted separately for reach and recline, and that's the beauty of it, because all of this is essentially coming from Citroen's learnings from their MPV game, and that's a very good thing. So like I said, this is quite a comfortable place to be in. You also get 3 adjustable headrests, so in terms of safety as well, they're right up there. In fact, on topic of safety, there are ISOFIX style seat mounts on all of these 3 seats, and you also get an ISOFIX style seat mount on the front passenger seat. So if you're driving alone and you want your baby on your side, the child seat can be mounted right there, which I think is a very, very thoughtful addition to the way they have gone about with the ISOFIX style seat mounts. And like I said, overall, very comfortable place to be in. You get a bit of storage areas here, little pockets here, you get a USB port here as well, but that's about it. Behind this, however, is a huge boot, easy to access, easy to load, and it can take a lot of luggage, more than a weekend's worth. So if you want to go road tripping with this car, there's going to be no problem at all. There is going to be enough space for you to pack in big suitcases with stuff for the entire family. So all in all, very nice place to be in, and this huge panoramic sunroof is the icing on the cake. The C5 Aircross competes with the likes of the Honda CR-V and the Volkswagen Tiguan in its footprint and cabin size. Though the designs are considered quirky, the French decidedly make their cars look different, and at least when it comes to Citroen, I'm glad that they do. They arguably started the trend of having DRLs in the brow and placing the headlamps in the bumper, and mostly everyone who has followed suit hasn't quite achieved the finesse that Citroen has. This C5 Aircross, which is Citroen's flagship, is the best representation of this design yet, and it is the car that will establish the brand in India from 2020. The colors, the accents and the upholstery is all customizable and will be an important part of the Citroen buying experience. As I said before, soft is the keyword for this car, both in terms of the suspension behavior and the comfort of the cabin. And all said and done, that cushy feeling is what many look for in this class. Then there is the design flair of the C5 Aircross, which is hard to ignore. Add to it a kit brimming with features like connected technologies, digital displays and the advanced safety technologies, and you have a car in the C5 Aircross that is hard to find faults with. It is a befitting car to bear the flag for the brand, and if they spec it just as well for the Indian market and at a sub-compass price tag, Citroen could become another new car brand to disrupt the Indian market.